My name's Elena and I'm 32 years old. Last Christmas I thought I was finally going to host the kind of family gathering I'd always dreamed about. A moment where I could finally share news that mattered. Just weeks before I'd gotten engaged to Marcus, a man who'd stood by me through thick and thin, and I had also been promoted to lead tactical operations after years of proving myself. I was eager to sit at that dinner table and finally make my family see me, to hear even a hint of pride in my mother's voice. But that night didn't go at all the way I imagined. It was the night everything between us shattered, and strangely enough, it might have been the best turning point of my life. Before I dive into that Christmas night, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more wild stories like this. Because trust me when I tell you what my mother said next, you'll be stunned. And what I told her back. That left her speechless. Growing up, I was the middle child in a house where middle meant overlooked. My older brother Daniel was the pride and joy, the flawless one who could do no wrong in my mom Regina's eyes. He's a surgeon now and she never misses a chance to boast about him. My younger sister Sophia was the baby of the family, the golden girl who was spoiled, doted on and is now a polished attorney. Me, Elena, stuck between them, the one who had to fight for scraps of recognition. From the moment I understood how things worked in our house, I knew I'd have to push twice as hard just to get half the credit. When Daniel scored AB, it was celebrated. When I aced every class, it was met with a passing comment. When Sophia had meltdowns or broke rules, it was brushed off as her being expressive. But if I dared to raise my tone, I was labeled difficult, rebellious, in need of fixing. In high school I worked endless hours, stacking shelves at the corner store, tutoring kids who barely listened. Not because we were strapped for cash, but because I thought maybe if I contributed they'd finally see my worth. I'd save every dollar to surprise my mom with gifts. Flowers, jewelry, thoughtful presents I spent weeks planning. Daniel and Sophia would snag something last minute from the mall, yet their gifts always earned the warmest hugs and the brightest smiles. When it came time for college, I thought I'd found my path. I chose military science and leadership, something that spoke to my discipline and drive. I loved the strategy, the grit, the responsibility of commanding, of creating order in chaos. But when I shared my choice, my mother's face fell like I'd betrayed her. The army, she scoffed. That's not a future, Elena. That's running off to play soldier. Why can't you be like Daniel, saving lives, or like Sophia, building a real career that actually matters? Her words cut deep, but I refused to let them define me. I graduated at the top of my class and was commissioned straight into active service. I worked my way up, mission by mission, long nights, impossible drills, pushing myself further than anyone thought I could. Every medal, every promotion, every hard-earned accomplishment, I'd call home with excitement. And still, every conversation ended the same way. That's lovely, Elena. But did you hear? Daniel just got his latest research featured in a top medical journal. And Sophia? She won another case last week. She's really making waves in the courtroom. That was the rhythm of nearly every call with my mother. No matter what I said, it always circled back to their triumphs. So I kept trying. Year after year, I mailed cards for every holiday, called every week, never missed a birthday or anniversary. At 26, I gave up my entire leave to help my parents settle into their new home, painting walls, unpacking boxes, while Daniel and Sophia were too busy saving lives and winning arguments to show up. When they needed someone to watch their German shepherd, I did it, even though I'm allergic and spent days coughing and swollen-eyed. Last spring, when my dad Richard went in for emergency surgery, I was the one who cleared my schedule, drove him to every appointment and sat with my mom through 6 anxious hours in the hospital. Daniel was in or that day, Sophia tied up in court, yet later I got scolded for not phoning them with enough updates. What stung most wasn't the lack of gratitude, it was the relentless comparisons. Every meal, every conversation somehow turned into a lecture about how my siblings were more successful, more polished, more worthy. Family dinners became a battlefield of patience, me silently enduring round after round of glowing praise for accomplishments that weren't any greater than mine, but were celebrated like they cured world hunger, simply because they weren't mine. But this past autumn, the tides in my own life began to shift. Marcus and I had been together for 2 years, and during a crisp October weekend in the mountains he proposed. The ring was modest but perfect, and more than that, Marcus saw me. He valued my victories, encouraged my pursuits, and never once made me feel like I had to outshine someone else just to be enough. Around the same time, the military promoted me to major, a role I had worked toward for years. Along with the new rank came a higher salary, greater responsibility, and my own team to lead. For the first time, I felt genuine pride in what I'd achieved. I could hardly wait to share the news at Christmas, hoping maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Christmas morning unfolded just as it always had in my parents' home on Cedar Lane. White lights wrapped the tree in the living room, red and gold ornaments hung in their usual places, and the same angel topper from my childhood crowned it all. The scent of cinnamon rolls and coffee drifted through the air as holiday music crackled softly from the old stereo. I pulled up at 10 a.m., arms full of carefully wrapped gifts, heart pounding with nervous excitement. Marcus was spending the holiday with his family up in Portland, but we'd already planned a celebration together once he returned. For weeks I'd carried the engagement ring tucked in my bag, waiting for the right moment to announce it face to face. My father greeted me at the door with his familiar, bone-crushing hug. Richard had always been the softer one, the parent who asked about my life and actually listened. "There's my soldier," he beamed, taking the gifts from me. "How's the new post treating you?" I smiled so wide it hurt. "Actually, Dad, I've got something pretty incredible to tell everyone." "Oh really? Can't wait to hear it, kiddo." That's when my mother stepped into the doorway, wrapped in the red cashmere sweater I'd given her last year for her birthday. She gave me that look, the one that cut me down before I even had the chance to say hello. "Elena, honestly, what are you wearing? That olive jacket makes your skin look dull. And your hair. Did you even try this morning?" "Merry Christmas to you too, Mom," I muttered, forcing a grin. "For the record, I spent an hour on my hair." "Well, maybe you should have spent 2, she shot back before turning toward the kitchen. "Sophia looks radiant in her new navy suit. You should really ask her where she shops." Sure enough, Sophia was already in the living room, poised in a perfectly tailored outfit that probably cost half my paycheck. She thrived at her big city law firm and had the wardrobe to prove it. Daniel lounged on the couch in a designer sweater and flashy new watch, his phone buzzing non-stop with hospital updates. "Look who finally made it," Sophia smirked. "We've been waiting to start gifts." "I'm 5 minutes late." "I stopped for gas," I replied, but nobody cared enough to hear me. The gift exchange unfolded exactly as I'd expected. Daniel handed out sleek gift cards from luxury shops, and Mom swooned about his thoughtfulness. Sophia gifted our parents a weekend getaway to a high-end spa, earning 20 minutes of wide-eyed praise and detailed vacation planning. I had spent weeks choosing meaningful gifts, a custom leather briefcase engraved with Sophia's initials, and for my parents, a photo album I'd built from scratch, 40 painstaking hours scanning old pictures, restoring damaged ones, and designing layouts that told our family's story. "How sweet," Mom said, barely flipping through the pages. "This must have taken a little time." "About 40 hours, I said, trying to sound light-hearted. "I had to restore." "That's nice, dear. Daniel, show everyone that gorgeous new watch your colleague gave you." And just like that, my moment vanished. Dad gave my shoulder a quick squeeze and whispered, "This is beautiful, Elena." "Thank you." But the room had already moved on. By midday, more relatives trickled in. Aunt Marcy and Uncle Joel, my cousins Leah and James, even Grandma Eleanor. The house filled with chatter and laughter while I drifted into the kitchen, sliding into my familiar role at my mother's side. "The turkey's ready in 20 minutes, she instructed, mashing potatoes without glancing up. "The table needs setting too." "Where's Sophia?" "In the living room chatting with Grandma," I answered. "Well, she works hard all week. She shouldn't have to worry about kitchen duties." I bit back the sting. I work just as hard, harder some weeks, but in this house that truth never counted. As the afternoon wore on, my nerves twisted tighter. I had planned to share my news over dessert, when bellies were full and tempers softened. My hand kept brushing the small ring box hidden in my purse, reminding myself this was joyful news, news that should unite us, not divide. But as I watched my mother's eyes shine whenever Daniel bragged about his patients or Sophia recounted her latest courtroom victory, I wondered if I was bracing myself for another letdown. At exactly 3 o'clock, dinner was served, just like every Christmas of my life. The dining table gleamed with Mom's best china, the same set she'd used for decades. Grandma Eleanor anchored one end, Dad the other, and the rest of us filled in by the unspoken pecking order that never changed. And once again I found myself wedged between the youngest cousin and the silent space where my grandfather's chair still sat empty. The conversation rolled along the way it always did, topics I'd heard 100 times before. Daniel's medical practice was booming faster than he'd projected. Sophia had just been bumped up to junior partner at her firm, and my cousin Leah was deep in the chaos of planning her summer wedding. I chimed in when prompted, laughed at Uncle Joel's corny jokes and complimented Aunt Marcy's new haircut, all the while waiting for my opening. "So, Elena," my grandmother finally asked during a rare lull, "are you still with that, what is it, that little defense job?" "Military operations, Grandma." "And yes, I am." I smiled faintly. "Actually, I've got some news about that." Before I could continue, my mother cut in. "Elena thinks running drills and barking orders counts as a career. I keep telling her she should go back to school for something real. Maybe teaching, maybe nursing." "It is a real career, Mom," I said evenly, fighting to keep my tone calm. "It requires leadership, strategy, discipline, and I was just promoted to major. I'm leading my own unit now." "Oh, how wonderful," Aunt Marcy said kindly. "That's impressive, Elena. Congratulations." "Thank you." I took a deep breath. And actually, I have even bigger news than that. My pulse quickened as I reached into my bag, pulling out the small velvet box. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for weeks. I flipped it open, revealing the ring. "Marcus proposed," I said, my voice almost trembling. "We're engaged." The reaction wasn't what I'd dreamed of. A beat of silence, followed by scattered polite congratulations. My father's smile was genuine, and Grandma reached across the table to squeeze my hand, but my mother's face stayed flat, almost disinterested. "When did this happen?" Sophia asked. "In October. We went hiking in the mountains and he proposed at this overlook with the most incredible view. It was perfect." "October," my mother snapped. "So you've been engaged 2 months and you're just now telling us?" I wanted to share it in person with everyone together. "Typical of you, Elena," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "Always so closed off, always keeping things to yourself. No wonder we never know what's going on in your life." The sting of her words burned, masked as concern but landing like criticism. "I'm not secretive, Mom. I call every week. I just wanted this moment to be special." "What does Marcus do again?" Daniel asked, even though I'd told him more than once. "He teaches high school history," I answered. "A teacher?" my mother repeated, her tone dripping with disdain. "Well, I suppose that's stable enough." The way she said it left no doubt. She didn't think he was worthy. Never mind that Marcus was loyal, kind, and treated me like I was the most important person in the world. "He sounds like a wonderful man," Grandma said firmly. "When do we meet him properly?" "Soon, I hope. He's with his family in Portland this week, but next month we'd love to get everyone together." "I hope he knows what he's signing up for," Sophia quipped with a half smile. "Elena's always been the difficult one." "I'm not difficult," I protested, but my mother was already nodding. "Elena has always been challenging," she said flatly, as though I weren't sitting right there. "She never seems to choose the easy path, for herself or anyone else." Her words landed like a punch, but I forced myself to hold steady. This was supposed to be a joyful moment. I wouldn't let them take that from me. "Well, I think it's incredible news," my father said, lifting his glass. "To Elena and Marcus. May your life together be full of happiness." A few people echoed the toast half-heartedly, but the moment felt thin, almost hollow. Conversation quickly veered back to other topics, leaving me sitting with the ring box still in my hand, feeling invisible again. When dessert arrived, Mom launched into a glowing account of Daniel's latest accolades. His article in a medical journal, his upcoming keynote at a Chicago conference, a potential teaching position at the university hospital. Her pride radiated across the table. "And Sophia," she continued seamlessly, "just secured the biggest win of her career. 6-figure settlement. The senior partners are already talking about pushing her to full partner ahead of schedule." "That's amazing," I said honestly. "Congratulations, Sophia." "Thanks," she murmured without looking up from her phone. I waited, silently hoping someone might circle back to my engagement or my promotion. But no one did. My news had evaporated from the conversation as if I'd never spoken at all. And then my mother turned to me, her eyes sharp. "You know, Elena, I've been thinking about this engagement of yours. And frankly, I'm concerned." What sort of man proposes to you? The table went silent. Even my cousins froze mid-bite. What do you mean? I asked, though deep down I feared I already knew. Let's face reality, Elena, my mother said coldly. You're 32. You spend your life in some job that barely scrapes by. You live in that cramped apartment. You've never accomplished anything noteworthy. Out of all my children, you're the most useless. I just hope Marcus realizes what he's committing to before it's too late. The silence was suffocating. I felt every set of eyes drilling into me, waiting to see if I'd crumble. Aunt Marcy's face was frozen in horror. My father shook his head slowly, disbelief written all over him. Even Daniel and Sophia looked stunned by the cruelty of the words. But for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. I didn't force a smile or swallow the sting. What rose in me wasn't shame, it was fire. 32 years of swallowed pain and quiet sacrifices finally surged to the surface. My hands trembled, but my voice came out steady as I stood and looked my mother in the eye. Then stop calling me when you need money. Her face faltered instantly, the smugness sliding into something I'd never seen before. Panic. What are you talking about? She demanded, but her voice had lost its usual bite. I'm talking about the $1,500 I've been sending every month for 2 years to cover your car payments because Dad's work was slow. I'm talking about the $3,000 I gave when his surgery bills weren't fully covered. I'm talking about the $2,000 I sent for Sophia's bar exam fees after she blew through her trust fund on that trip to Europe. I pulled out my phone, opening my banking app with hands that felt strangely calm. Want to see the receipts? I held up the glowing screen. Because I've got every single transfer, every check, every loan that never got paid back. Aunt Marcy's jaw had dropped. Uncle Joel had stopped chewing, staring at me like I'd just revealed state secrets. Grandma Eleanor leaned back slowly, nodding as if puzzle pieces were sliding into place. Elena, my father started, but I wasn't finished. Remember last Christmas, when Daniel's practice was tanking and his student loans went into default? Guess who paid them off? It wasn't you two, you were still drowning in medical bills. It was me. $4,000 I'd been saving for a down payment on a house. Daniel's face went pale. Elena, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. But his mom told me not to tell you. Said it would embarrass you and that I should just consider it my contribution to the family. I spat the word out like it was poison. As if I haven't been contributing my entire life. I turned back to my mother, who now looked like she was choking on her own silence. You want to know what kind of man proposes to me? The kind who sees the woman who's been quietly holding this family together while everyone else got all the applause. The kind who realizes I've been sacrificing my own future so you could all keep pretending everything was fine. I never asked you to, my mother muttered weakly. The hell you didn't. You called me sobbing about the car. You called me panicked about Dad's surgery. You called me begging for Sophia's fees. And I came through, every single time. Because that's what family does. Apparently that's what the useless daughter does while the shining stars get all the praise. Sophia's voice cracked as she finally spoke. I didn't know you paid for my bar exam. Of course you didn't. I wasn't supposed to tell you. Just like I wasn't supposed to tell anyone about the money I've sent them month after month. Or about bailing Daniel out. Or about the countless times I covered bills that weren't mine. I scrolled through my app, reading aloud as the table hung on every word. September 15, 2022, $1,500 to Regina Walsh, car payment. October 3rd, $1,500 to Regina, car payment. November 7th, $2,000 to Richard Walsh, medical expenses. December 19th, $1,500 to Regina, car payment. My father turned toward her, his eyes hard. Regina, is this true? It's not what it sounds like, she said quickly. Elena was just helping until we got back on our feet. Temporarily. I let out a sharp laugh. 2 years, Mom. 2 years of me covering your bills while you sneered about how pathetic my career was. 2 years of me living paycheck to paycheck while you drove around in a car I was paying for. Grandma reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her voice soft but steady. Darling, why didn't you tell us any of this? Because I thought if I just gave enough, if I just proved myself useful, maybe I'd finally earn the love and respect that Daniel and Sophia seemed to get without even trying, I said, my voice breaking. I thought if I carried the weight for everyone else, maybe Mom would stop looking at me like I was a mistake. The tears that spilled weren't out of sadness anymore. They were release. Decades of swallowed pain finally escaping. You want to know what Marcus sees in me? I continued, my voice steadying, growing sharper with every word. He sees someone who's worked 2 jobs while secretly keeping this family afloat. He sees someone who's put aside her own future to make sure everyone else was okay. He sees someone who has been the real backbone of this family, even while being treated like the weakest link. Daniel shook his head, his voice low. I had no idea. If I'd known you were the one who... You'd what? You'd treat me with basic respect? You'd finally step in when Mom cut me down. I snapped. That's all I've ever wanted. Not praise. Not applause. Just simple decency. I turned to Sophia, who wouldn't lift her eyes from her plate. Do you know how many times I've covered for you? Not just with money. When you were too hungover to help Mom move, who packed the boxes? When you were too busy to visit Dad in the hospital, who sat by his side for hours? Me. Always me. Elena, my father said quietly, his face etched with regret. I'm sorry. I didn't know your mother was taking money from you. She told me you were the most stable one, that it was your responsibility to help. She made me promise not to tell you. I let out a bitter laugh. Isn't that funny? To her, I'm the useless child one moment and the financially stable one the next, depending on what she needs. Finally, my mother's voice cut through. You're exaggerating. Families help each other. That's what we do. No, Mom, I said firmly, standing now, my chair scraping back across the floor. What families should do is support each other. Respect each other. What you do is drain me dry and then call me worthless. You use me as your safety net while shaming me for not measuring up to the children you actually brag about. I grabbed my purse, my coat. So congratulations, you're about to see how useless I really am. Because starting today, the Bank of Elena is permanently closed. The aftermath was instant chaos. Voices overlapping around the table. Aunt Marcy demanding to know how long this had been happening. Uncle Joel pressing my father for the truth. Grandma staring at my mother, her disappointment written in every line of her face. Elena, wait, my mother said, standing abruptly as I made for the door. Let's talk about this privately. There's no need to air our private business in front of everyone, my mother snapped. Our family business? I shot back, turning on my heel to face her. You mean the family business where you tear me down in front of these same people every chance you get? The family business where you announce to everyone that I'm the most useless child you have? If that's fair game at the table, then so is the truth about what's really been happening here. You're being vindictive, she accused, though her voice was trembling. No, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. For the first time in my adult life, I'm being honest. And if my honesty makes you squirm, maybe you should be asking yourself why. From across the table, my cousin Leah spoke up, her eyes wide. Elena, are you serious about all this money? You've really been supporting them. Dead serious, I said. And I can pull up bank statements going back years if anyone needs proof. My father was staring at my mother now, confusion and fury warring on his face. Regina, we need to talk. Right now. Not here, she hissed. Not in front of everyone. Why not? I shot back. You never hesitated to broadcast my failures in front of them. You had no problem calling me useless at this very table. But now suddenly the truth is off limits. Daniel finally broke his silence, his voice low. Elena, about my loans. I swear I didn't know. I thought Mom and Dad covered it. I know you didn't know, I said firmly. Because Mom made sure of that. But let me ask you something, Daniel. In all the years we've been adults, have you ever once asked me if I needed help? Ever asked about my finances, my struggles, my life beyond the bare minimum? He went quiet. After a long pause, he admitted, no, I guess I just assumed you were fine. You assumed I was fine because it was easier than paying attention. Just like it was easier for Sophia to assume someone else would handle the family crises. Just like it was easier for Mom to assume I'd keep stepping in, while she criticized me for not being good enough. Sophia finally looked up, her voice soft but defensive. I just don't understand why you didn't say no if you didn't want to help. Because I did want to help, I exclaimed, my voice breaking. Because I love this family despite everything. Because I thought maybe if I showed my value in some tangible way, I'd finally be treated like I mattered. But now I see it. No amount of sacrifice was ever going to change how you all see me. The room fell silent when my grandmother cleared her throat. Eleanor Walsh had always been the spine of this family, and when she spoke, everyone listened. Her voice was firm, sharper than I'd ever heard it. "Regina," she said, fixing my mother with a glare. "I am deeply disappointed in you. This young woman has been keeping this family afloat, giving up her own future to help you, and you've repaid her by treating her like she's worthless." "That's not just ungrateful, Regina," my grandmother said sharply. "It's cruel. Mother, you don't understand the whole situation. My mom started." "I understand enough," Grandma cut her off. "I understand that Elena has been working herself to the bone, holding down 2 jobs and apparently keeping half this family afloat, all while you've been telling anyone who would listen that she wasn't good enough. I understand that she just announced her engagement, something that should be one of the happiest moments of her life, and instead of celebrating her, you tried to tear her down." The room was silent except for my mother's quick, uneven breaths. I had never seen her cornered like that before, least of all by her own mother. "And another thing," Grandma continued, her voice like steel, "I've watched this girl her entire life. She has always been kind, generous, and hardworking. If she's the most useless child you have, Regina, then maybe you don't know the first thing about measuring a person's worth." Aunt Marcy nodded, her eyes wet. "I have to agree. Elena, I had no idea you were carrying all this. I always wondered why you looked so drained at these gatherings." "I wasn't just stressed," I said quietly. "I was exhausted. Emotionally, financially, physically, exhausted from trying to be enough for a family that decided years ago I never would be." My mother made one last attempt to claw back control. "Elena, you're exaggerating. Families help each other, that's what we do. And I never said you were worthless. You said I was the most useless child you had." I shot back, my voice steady. "You said it in front of everyone, minutes after I told you I was engaged. What else would you call that?" Her mouth opened but nothing came out. "You know what, Mom? It doesn't even matter anymore. I'm done. I'm done trying to earn your approval, done sacrificing my happiness and my future just to keep carrying people who won't even respect me. I'm done being your safety net while you paint me as your failure." I grabbed my purse and coat, heading for the door. Then I turned back one last time. "My wedding is going to be beautiful. Marcus and I are going to build a life filled with love and respect, without the constant criticism and manipulation I've tolerated for 32 years. Anyone who wants to be part of that life with kindness is welcome. Anyone who doesn't, keep my number for emergencies if you want, but don't expect me to answer." And with that, I walked out of my childhood home, leaving behind a stunned silence, and a mother who for once had nothing to say. The week after Christmas felt like living in a different world. My phone began buzzing before I'd even made it home, and it didn't stop for days. But for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't picking up every call, wasn't rushing to soothe everyone else's emotions. Marcus flew back from Portland 2 days early after I called him, crying from the car in my parents' driveway. When he walked into my apartment that night, I was still in my wrinkled Christmas dress, staring at my phone as it lit up with missed calls and messages. "I can't believe I actually did that," I kept whispering. "I can't believe I finally said it all out loud." "I can," he said softly, wrapping his arms around me. "I've been waiting for you to stand up to them since the day we met. But I knew you had to reach that point yourself." "What if I was too harsh?" I asked. "Elena," he said gently, looking me right in the eye. "You've been paying your mother's car payment for 2 years while she told people you were useless. There is no version of reality where you were too harsh." That night, the messages poured in and continued for days. The first real call came from my father, his voice heavy with remorse. "Elena, sweetheart, I had no idea your mother was taking money from you. I'm so sorry. If I'd known." "Dad, it's not just about the money," I said quietly. "It's about the way she's treated me my whole life. The money was just the final straw." "I know," he said, his voice cracking. "I know, sweetheart. I've been thinking about everything since you walked out," my dad told me a few days later. "And you're right. I should have stood up for you. I should have spoken out when she made those comments. I failed you in that, and I'm sorry." It was the first genuine apology I had ever heard from anyone in my family. And though simple, it meant more than I could put into words. The next day, Daniel called. "Elena, I feel awful about the loan situation. I want to pay you back." "It's not about the money, Daniel," I said firmly. It's about the fact that for years, you've been fine assuming someone else would carry the weight while you chased your career. You never once asked if I needed help. There was a pause. You're right, he admitted quietly. I guess I always thought of you as the strong one. The one who had it figured out. I wasn't strong. I just couldn't say no, I replied. There's a difference. Sophia didn't call until 3 days later. When she finally did, her tone was defensive. I don't get why you're making such a big deal out of this, Elena. Families help each other. No one forced you to give us money. Do you remember what you said to me at dinner? I asked. You called me the difficult one. Do you realize how that felt right after Mom called me useless? I was just joking around. It wasn't a joke to me. It never is. Do you realize I can't remember the last time either of you said something genuinely kind about me? The last time you celebrated something good in my life. There was a long silence. I never thought of it that way, she said at last. That's the problem, I said quietly. None of you think about it. You take what I give and treat me like I'm the burden. My mother, of course, was relentless. On December 26th, she called 6 times, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly frantic. Elena, this is ridiculous. Call me back so we can handle this like adults. Elena, you're being selfish. Your father is upset. This is tearing the family apart. Elena, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude needs to stop. We're your family. On the 28th, her approach shifted. Elena, honey, maybe I was a little harsh at dinner. Let's talk about working something out with the money. But it wasn't until December 30th that my phone rang again. And this time, I heard the words I had been waiting my whole life to hear. Elena, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I nearly didn't answer. I'd been screening her calls for days, and Marcus had been urging me to take all the time I needed. But something about the 10th ring made me pick up. Hello, Mom. Elena, thank God. Please don't hang up. I need to say this. I'm listening. Your father and I have been talking, and I think I owe you a real apology. What I said at dinner was unforgivable. You're not useless. You've been the opposite. You've been holding this family together, and I treated you like nothing. It was the closest thing to sincerity I'd ever heard from her. But I wasn't about to lower my guard. Mom, it's not just about that one night, I said, my voice firm. It's been my whole life. The constant criticism. The endless comparisons to Daniel and Sophia. The way you dismissed everything I worked for. The way you made me feel small no matter what I did. I know, she said softly, her voice trembling now. I know, my mom said quietly. And I don't have a good excuse for it. Maybe I saw myself in you. And I was harder on you because of it. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. I was the middle child too, she admitted. I know what it feels like to be invisible. And instead of protecting you from that, I think I made it worse. I pushed you harder because I wanted you to be stronger than I was. It wasn't an excuse, not even close, but it was the first time she'd ever shown me any real vulnerability, any acknowledgement of her own failures. The money stops, Mom, I said firmly. All of it. No more car payments, no more loans, no more bailing anyone out. I understand, she said softly. You're right. We should never have put that burden on you. And the criticism stops too. I won't tolerate being belittled anymore, especially in front of other people. Okay, she whispered. I'll try to do better. Don't try, Mom. Do better. Because if you can't, Marcus and I will build our life without this family's involvement. It was an ultimatum, but for the first time in my life, it felt necessary. I wasn't bluffing and she knew it. 3 months later, everything looked different. The constant pressure of family bills was gone, replaced by something foreign to me, savings. For the first time since college, I had money left over at the end of each month. Marcus and I opened a joint account and started planning, not just for our wedding but for our future. The emotional shift was even bigger. Without the endless calls, guilt trips, and obligations, I felt lighter, stronger, more myself. My performance at work skyrocketed. With no distractions pulling me under, I was sharper, more confident in meetings. My CO pulled me aside during my quarterly review and said, "You seem different lately. More focused. More decisive. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." What I was doing was something I'd never done before. Prioritizing my own well-being. The family dynamic shifted too once the financial safety net disappeared. My father, who had truly been in the dark, was furious when he realized the scope of it. 2 years, Regina? I overheard him shout one evening. You've been taking money from our daughter for 2 years and never told me? They ended up in financial counseling, something that should have happened long ago. Dad picked up a part-time consulting role, and Mom was finally forced to admit they'd been living well beyond their means. Meanwhile, Daniel and Sophia were left to face their own assumptions. 6 weeks after Christmas, Daniel called again. I've been thinking about what you said, he told me. About never asking if you needed help. And you're right. I was so wrapped up in myself that I never considered you might have struggles of your own. I want to do better. So let me start with this. What do you need? How can I support you? It was such a simple question, but it stopped me cold. It was the first time in our adult lives my brother had ever asked me that. We ended up talking for 2 hours. About my career goals, my relationship with Marcus, the future I was building. For once, it felt like he was talking to me as a person, not as the family's built-in problem solver. Sophia took longer to come around. Sophia stayed defensive for a while. She treated my boundaries like they were an attack instead of what they really were, me finally protecting myself. But even she began to soften, especially after a conversation with our grandmother. Eleanor, never one to mince words, had pulled both of my siblings aside. Your sister has been sacrificing for this family while you two built your careers, she told them firmly. The least you can do now is give her the respect she deserves. My relationship with my mother remained the trickiest. She was making an effort, that much was clear, but years of ingrained habits don't vanish overnight. Sometimes she'd catch herself mid-criticism and immediately backtrack. Or she'd ask about my work in a tone that wasn't laced with dismissal. At first it sounded stiff, almost rehearsed. But gradually it began to feel real. The true test came once Marcus and I started planning our wedding. I braced myself for the nitpicking, the control, the endless commentary. To my surprise, my mother held back. When she did share an opinion, she softened it with phrases like, just an idea, or, only if you think it works. I really like the photographer you chose, she said once, studying the samples I'd shown her. The work is beautiful. It was such a normal, supportive thing to hear that I almost didn't know how to respond. Was this what family was supposed to feel like? My father, on the other hand, threw himself into wedding planning with an enthusiasm I hadn't expected. He offered to help cover costs, insisted on walking me down the aisle, and spent hours researching venues and vendors with me. It was as though he was trying to make up for all the years he'd quietly stood by. I'm proud of you, he told me one afternoon as we sampled cakes in a little bakery downtown. Not just for standing up to your mother, but for the life you've built. Marcus is a lucky man. Coming from him, those words hit me deeper than I can explain. The biggest surprise, though, was how many other relatives reached out once they knew the full story. Aunt Marcy began calling me regularly just to check in. Cousin Leah offered to help with wedding prep. Even distant family members made an effort to reconnect in ways they never had before. I always sensed tension, Aunt Marcy admitted. But I never realized how bad it really was. Your mother's always been intense. I didn't know she was being that unfair to you. As it turned out, plenty of them had noticed pieces of the dynamic but felt too uncomfortable to intervene. My Christmas blow-up had forced the truth into the open, and given them permission to acknowledge what they'd quietly ignored for years. Meanwhile, my relationship with Marcus's family blossomed. With the constant drain of my own family's chaos gone, I finally had space to invest in building bonds with his parents and siblings. They welcomed me with warmth and openness I'd never known. Your family is so normal, I whispered to Marcus after a Sunday dinner where no one criticized anyone, and everyone seemed genuinely happy just to be together. Yours can be too, he said gently. It just takes time. And boundaries. He was right. Slowly, cautiously, with clear expectations and consequences, some of my family ties began to heal. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough to give me hope that the future didn't have to look like the past. 6 months after that Christmas dinner, Marcus and I stood together in a small ceremony at a historic inn just outside the city. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. The guest list for our wedding was carefully chosen. Only the people who had truly shown up for us, who respected our relationship and treated us both with dignity. My father walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. My grandmother sat proudly in the front row, her smile brighter than I'd ever seen it. My mother was there too, elegant and composed, though I could tell it took effort for her to restrain her usual criticisms. Daniel and Sophia came as well, and for once they seemed genuinely happy for me. But the guests who mattered most weren't there out of obligation. They were the ones who had supported me without conditions. Marcus's family, who welcomed me from day one, Aunt Marcy and Cousin Leah, who had become true sources of encouragement, and my closest friends who had stood by me through years of family struggles and now celebrated that I had finally claimed my own life. "You look radiant," my grandmother whispered as she embraced me after the ceremony. "Not just beautiful, happy. Truly happy. I've been waiting to see this day." During the reception, my father gave a speech that left me in tears. "Elena has always been the heart of this family," he said, his voice catching. "Even when we didn't appreciate her the way we should have. She's kind, generous, and stronger than any of us realized. Marcus, you're not just marrying a remarkable woman, you're marrying someone who will move mountains for the people she loves. I hope you never take that for granted the way some of us have." It was the public acknowledgement I had been waiting my entire life to hear. It didn't erase the years of imbalance, but it mattered more than I could say. Even my mother managed words that landed right, if only briefly. "Elena," she said softly, "I'm sorry it took me so long to see what an amazing daughter I have. I hope you and Marcus build a beautiful life together." It wasn't full repair, but it was a start. The most powerful moment came later, during our first dance. As Marcus and I swayed to the music, surrounded by people who truly loved us, I realized something profound. I was happy. Completely, freely, deeply happy. "No regrets," Marcus whispered against my ear. "None," I answered, and I meant it. The months that followed felt like stepping into an entirely new life. Marriage to Marcus was everything I'd hoped for and more. With the money I'd finally been able to save once I stopped propping up my family, we bought a house together. We traveled. We hosted dinners with friends. We began weaving our own traditions, ones rooted in joy, not obligation. My career took off in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Without the constant weight of drama and guilt, I had energy to throw myself fully into my work. I led successful missions, built strong alliances, and earned the promotion I'd been aiming for. The woman who had once been dismissed as useless was now commanding her own unit. Even some family relationships found new footing. My father and I grew close, finally connecting as friends who spoke openly about books, work, and even his newfound woodworking hobby. Daniel made real efforts to show up, calling to check in and sometimes even asking my opinion on his personal dilemmas. My grandmother became one of my dearest confidants, someone I could speak to without judgment. My mother remained the most complicated relationship. Old habits don't disappear overnight, but she tried. She apologized more often. She caught herself before a sharp word slipped out. And sometimes she surprised me. When I told her I was considering going back to school for an MBA, she said, "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity." And for once I actually believed she meant it. "You'd be excellent at that." It wasn't the overwhelming cheerleading I might have expected from Daniel or Sophia, but it was respectful, even encouraging, and coming from my mother, that was more than I'd ever thought possible. Sophia and I settled into a polite but distant rhythm. We exchanged pleasantries at gatherings, stayed cordial, but never found the closeness I once hoped for. And that was okay. I'd finally accepted that not every family bond can be healed, and that didn't mean I'd failed. The biggest shift wasn't in them, it was in me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval or trying to prove my worth. I knew who I was, what I'd accomplished, and the value I brought into my relationships. Marcus's love had shown me what it felt like to be truly seen and appreciated, and through that I'd learned to see and value myself. Nearly a year after our wedding, Marcus and I were finishing dinner when my phone rang. It was my mother. Nothing unusual, but there was something different in her voice. "Elena, I need to tell you something," she said. "Your father and I ran into Mrs. Peterson at the market today. She asked about you and I told her about your promotion, about the new house, and how proud I am of you." Then I realized, I don't think I've ever actually said that to you. "Said what, Mom?" I asked cautiously. "That I'm proud of you. That I've always been proud, even if I was too stubborn or too fixated on what I thought success should look like to admit it. You're an incredible woman, Elena. Strong, compassionate, successful, generous. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it out loud. It was the conversation I had once dreamed of. But by then I didn't need it to feel whole. That's what made it so powerful. It was real, not desperate. Thank you, Mom, I said softly. That means a lot. I love you, sweetheart. I should have been saying that more too. I love you too. When I hung up, Marcus was smiling at me. So, how does it feel? Good, I said, surprised by the honesty in my voice. It feels really good. But the truth is, I think I'd have been okay even if she never said it. And that was the victory. Not that my family had finally learned to treat me with respect, though that mattered. The real victory was that I'd learned to respect myself enough to demand better, to build a life that wasn't dependent on their validation. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is to stop accepting behavior that wounds you. I learned that financial independence and emotional independence are intertwined. Most importantly, I learned that the family you choose can matter just as much as the one you're born into. Surrounding yourself with people who recognize your worth isn't selfish. It's what makes you whole. The little girl who once fought endlessly to earn love had become a woman who knew deep down that she was worthy of love simply as she was. And that changed everything. Have you ever had to set hard boundaries with family who took you for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this story resonates, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about standing tall and finding your worth. Share it with anyone who needs the reminder that they deserve respect, no matter what their family dynamic looks like. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. And sometimes the most loving act is refusing to accept anything less than you deserve. Thanks for listening. I hope my story gives someone else the courage to speak their truth. Wishing you strength to know your worth and courage to demand the respect you've always deserved.